Welcome to The Lumber Word, where industry veterans Matt Beamer, Gregg Riley, and Ashley Buckle dissect the world of commodity lumber each week. We bring you up-to-date insights on supply, demand, and market trends, sharing our trading expertise to benefit everyone in the supply chain. Join us for informative and entertaining discussions that guarantee to make you wiser about all things lumber.
Hey everyone, welcome to this week's episode of The Lumber Word. Matt, Gregg, and I are recording this on January 24th, 2024. Hopefully we get it out to you right away. Had some great feedback from last week's show. Actually had some people call, and we're working on putting together some spots, some pre, mid, and post rollout advertisements for people. So if you're interested, you can message me. Want to jump back right into it? How are you boys doing, Matt and Gregg?
Awesome.
Outstanding.
I love it. So market update, a little bit has changed since we talked last time. We'll get into it when we talk about different species, but we had a mill announcement on Monday afternoon or Monday evening when we're all sitting home at dinner, and we all got hit with the email. I think, Matt, you were the first one to send it over to me. And 10 years ago, I would have probably freaked out about it. Now I'm like, okay, I'll deal with that tomorrow. Right. But it was funny. I got to work Tuesday morning and like not many people had even heard about it. And I don't want to say didn't care about it, but everybody's like, okay, like almost was kind of expected in a way. But with that said, we had a little bit of a rally on some certain items. And I can tell you from the market I trade in, it's definitely better than it was last week at this time. It seems like some items probably reach their low trade point and maybe bounced a little bit. I know that's a very, very 40, 50, 100,000 foot look at the market, but what did you guys see this week?
I am actually, yesterday was a good day and Monday was a decent day. Today, I'm not super busy. I don't know if it's just the post-rally hangover or if whatever it is that I want to sell. Just people don't seem to be interested in as much today as yesterday. But overall, I've been busy. Like last week, you said you weren't that busy. I was busy last week. And so maybe it's just we're all taking turns selling things at different times. But I like the market in general. I think that there's going to be weather disruptions. And so you kind of have to go where the weather isn't terrible, which right now, most of America has some residue of bad weather, unless you're in the Pacific office like Gregg. But even I talked to a guy in Arizona today. He said that it's muddy down there because they got a little bit of rain, which that doesn't happen very often down there. So in Oregon, we just actually went from a week ago, everybody was out of power and there was ice storms all over the place to now it's 55 degrees and pouring rain. They call it the Pineapple Express. And so the ground is saturated. Like literally there's nowhere for the water to go. I'm going to drive over the Willamette River at lunchtime today and it's going to look like the Mississippi. It's going to look like the Mississippi in April. It's going to just be a giant bloated brown mess with logs floating down it. If you're trying to pour some concrete in Oregon, Western Oregon today, good luck to you, buddy. It's not going to happen. So that's something that I think is a real deal right now, weather. But if you're looking at the 40,000 foot perspective, it doesn't matter what's happening today, right? Like if you really want to be good at this and you want to make educated decisions, today matters a little bit, but a month from now and 2 months from now and 3 months from now matters just as much, if not more. So you have to really try to take both perspectives at the same time. And so that being said, I'm rather optimistic. We have good economic news out there. The stock market's making new highs. Our economy home building seems to be healthy. So I can't complain.
Yeah, Matt, I think you had a good point. I guess Gregg and I, when we kind of rounded up at the end of the day, it's like we'll pass on some stuff and take some stuff, but it's funny, some of the stuff we pass on, items for people will circle back the next day and pay our number that's significantly higher than what we had a counter on the day before. And like I'm learning to walk down the hill instead of run down it. sometimes on in those cases, and that's that's kind of the market we're in. It's like there's people throwing out bids every day, and then somebody comes back the next day. I'm like, Greg, man, they paid $20, like what our ask price was versus that counter, and like, wow. But then yesterday we put a whole bunch of RFQs out on some items, and you get the hard items like the dog breakfast tallies, which have like 5 items on them, but the ones that you thought you had priced really well and you were going to get them, you didn't get them.
The orders you get and take are the only ones that matter. The rest of them, good. It's good for information. I had a couple of points. One was I wanted to, put kudos out to, to the squad here. We've been doing this now for about a year and a half, Ash?
I would say just being together, we've been over almost 2 years, right? Doing this.
It's coming up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Listen, we do this because it's fun and it's good for us to just kind of get together and hash things out. Apparently, there's a lot of folks in the industry that are starting to enjoy it. Pretty exciting news there, Ash. You've been invited up to broadcast live from the Montreal Wood Exchange. That's very exciting. In terms of the market, number one, I'm going to say, Matt, you have been spot on for at least the last 3, 4, 5 months. I mean, anybody that just did nothing but listen to you is in great shape.
That's true.
Thank you.
I'm just saying. The other thing I look at is, given the weather that we're enduring, the market strength is impressive. If you just think about, what the market wants to do, the market keeps telling us that it wants to go higher. We are in seasonal strength, and that extends for the next, 60 to 90 days. When we get into, actually, we're going to do, Mary Day dump today.
Absolutely.
Oh, okay, good. Well, I don't want to jump ahead though, but I did just want to we had real good feedback last week about talking about Southern Yellow Pine, and it's a whole other market. So we're making a concerted effort to bring on some guests to talk about that in the future. We're starting to get a schedule together, but as a teaser, we have one of the largest European lumber importers, mills, that's going to be on next week, a very knowledgeable gentleman. So, anybody that listens this week, you want to make sure you get in next week.
Yeah, good point. And back to what you just said about Matt, it's funny, Greg, I can probably list a bunch of times over the last 3 or 4 months. We're on a Friday or Saturday where we're decompressing on stuff. You're like, yeah, Matt was spot on about that. where we were thinking about something different, right?
Yeah.
So
don't tell anybody.
Yeah,
don't want the secret to get out.
Let's go. So a little feedback from some of the listeners that we're having a lot more people listening. We hear everything from younger people at mill sales floors, wholesale sales floors, learning stuff from us, to VPs at large companies listening to this. And we appreciate all of them, and we are grateful for that. And we want to throw something out there to everybody. We've had some people say, could you do some OSB and maybe get a little bit more regional when you talk about it, or expand your regions when you talk about items? Because we do talk a little bit about what we know, and we're going to do our best to talk about other things. We could just pretend to know about some other regions, but we'll.
I thought that's what I was doing already.
No doubt. We'll anyway.
Let's talk about that, because when I first started talking to Ashley when we were young, 25 years ago,
yeah,
you were an Upper Midwest guy. You were at Block, and Greg was with Block, and you guys did a lot of like reloaded stuff in Edwardsburg, Michigan, and Nolan in Detroit, and you had a lot of that Upper Midwest business. Now, you guys are, Greg still does some of his Northeast stuff, but now you're mainly Southern. You got this Florida to Texas business. And so your business has changed a little bit. We could always use a guy that's a real expert in the Upper Midwest to come on as a guest, right?
We did that because, there's more starts in San Antonio, which is the 4th largest market in Texas, than there are in Chicago.
Right. No,
But
I mean, I understand. Like my business is heavier to Texas now than it used to be because I've been doing business in Texas for 29 years. But the percentage of business I do in Texas has just gone up just naturally, just because that's where all the housing starts are. But no, I mean, it would be good to have a guy from the Midwest that's like an old, I could name some names, but there's several people that are sharp, spruce guys and Doug fir and Hemfir guys, MSR guys in Wisconsin, Minnesota, Illinois, Michigan. Our buddy in Michigan, the treater guy, he's nobody's fool.
yeah,
There's lots of people that we know in this business in those markets that would be good candidates to come on here.
and Matt, you picked a perfect, like, so I'm quoting stuff into Wisconsin in some areas today. That's a tough area to quote into sometimes because you've got the Western spruce coming in there. You got Eastern spruce coming in there.
Right.
You've got mills that want to be everything to everybody, putting wood on the ground there, trying to just take any order at any price,
Right.
which makes no sense sometimes. But you're right. It's got its own unique characteristics, which are very interesting. But we'll do our best over the time to create, Greg, what do we say? Some more regional dichotomy?
Yeah. We want to dig into regional dichotomies. Absolutely.
I just wanted to
let me ask you something right now, Ash.
Yeah.
What do you think about the curtailment, like in the big picture? What do you think about it?
I've been thinking a lot about it, and I've been watching these curtailments / closures. And I guess when I look at it, what I see, and maybe I'm jumping ahead a little bit here, when I run a Phoenix 2100 MSR chart against a Great Lakes 2100 MSR chart, I watched that basis over the last 5 years expanding to its all-time wide basis of about $150. And I say to myself, self, what does this mean? And what it means is a lot less high grades in the Canadian spruce, Western Canadian spruce that are going to be coming out, a lot less production. And I see it in MSR, I see it in other things, and I think that we're going to see more of it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when you have arguably the lowest cost producer in North America continuing to permanently shut production capability, that's telling you a lot about like prices. And, if they're coming out with that, how much is supply actually trickling off? And when do we hit the tipping point between consumption and supply? I'll add to that the projections on European lumber. We'll get more input on this next week, but the run rate now on European imports continues to fall. And the combination, we've had multiple reports now of the European markets being better and the returns being substantially higher than the current US market, which is going to divert production there. So,
and a freight spike.
When do we hit that tipping point? When do we hit that tipping point?
Greg, just to add to what you said, we were talking to a couple of European producers over the last few weeks, and what they told us a month ago and 2 months ago, some of these Middle East areas and other ones have just quickly become better to ship to. And as Matt just said, some of these European shippers have said, we're scheduling our vessels for March, but we still don't know what our freight's going to be because they'll tell us in March how much it's jumped, if it's what it's gone up. So yeah, a lot of uncertainty. But to your point, Greg, I think we all thought that we had adjusted back to a normalized amount of euro after that big move in Q3 last year. And now, I mean, arguably we're saying we're going to get less, but how much less, right?
Well, we're probably at 40% of Q1 last year level. And I suspect that, that's going to tail off further in the second quarter.
That's going to change who I may want to date now going forward too. So no, but to add to that, let's bring it all together. So less Western spruce, less euro,
the Western spruce side of things, we've been talking about this. The economics of it just doesn't work anymore. They've gone from the cheapest log in the world to the most expensive log in North America, and the labor costs are up, and I mean, they got to go farther away to get the logs, so there's more transportation on the log cost side. Everything that they're doing costs more money. Now, if we can keep lumber prices in the 440 or higher range as the quarter goes on and the year goes on, they'll make some money. It won't be a loss, but it won't be very profitable. But the big point I'm trying to make here is you look at what the Fraser announcement with Fraser Lake shutting down, 160 million board feet, not that big of a deal. Like in the big scheme of things, it's only 160 million board feet. However, it signals something else underlying that decision, which is these mills in Canada spent billions of dollars buying yellow pine production over the last decade, right? And they're making money in the South, even at 400 mil, right? They're making money. They can't make money in Canada at 400 mil, but they can make money in Alabama at 400 mil. And so what incentive do they have to keep these mills open if they're just old, dilapidated, inefficient sawmills that lose money all the time? Meanwhile, their shareholders demand a return on their investment, and so they make more money down the South. Now they're starting to see the big picture, like, well, let's just move our assets. Let's move the chips from one part of the table to the other, and that's what they're doing. I expect more of that, honestly, not less. I think that the government in Canada has turned their back on the Western Canadian producers, and it's gonna bite them. Honestly, we went through this in Oregon 40 years ago, so I've seen this already. What happens to public timber? It just gets disappeared. They'll find a new. For us, it was the spotted owl. For the Canadians, it's the caribou. But they'll find a reason to not let these guys have timber in the future, and they're going to drive these companies away.
Yeah, once you lose that infrastructure, I saw it in the Flagstaff market when I went down and visited one time. That used to, once you lose that infrastructure of loggers and logging and sawmills, you don't just flip it back on in a year. Once it's gone, it's like it's kind of gone.
It's gone.
So yeah, that's a disappointing for some people in that area. So I don't know. Hopefully it's slowed down, but we'll see.
Mary Date dump. You ready?
Well, actually, I want to so we talked about curtailments. We talked about, we'll talk about Eastern and Western spruce and all that. We talked about Euro. Yeah, let's talk about Mary Date. And I put break up instead of dump. It sounds so much better when my wife is listening to my podcast.
Dump.
Okay. I'm pretty excited about. I am dating Euro 2x4 16s. I continue to date them because of the high level of liquidity. It's a great item to be out there, like having fun with. Here's what I'm married to. I am married to 2x4 104 and 5/8 studs. This is a lifelong. Hopefully, it lasts at least a few months. These are so undervalued. If you're a basis trader, if you're out there, you should be loading the boat and selling May against them. If you are a multifamily and you have jobs starting in the second quarter, you should be covering them. Find someone who wants to sell you close to today's number and pants them. Okay? If you're a retail end user, what is your comfort level on inventory? And whatever it is, double it. These are cheap on a basis level, on an actual level, and this is a football item. Okay, this is a long ball item. Let's go. Dumping. What am I dumping? You know what? I'm not dumping anything right now. I've been on a slow burn with Matt, like feeling like, yeah, Matt's really got a feel for this. You know what? I'm kind of like jumping up on the table right now and going, bye.
You're making me nervous.
Oh, man. Okay, Matt, to you, what do you like?
Well, that cute gal in the corner over there who I plan on making my wife is Canadian dry dug fir 2x4.
There we got
Ooh,
some
if
different
the-
regionality.
If they want to dump it, I want to buy it because at some of the levels we're hearing and seeing, it's cheaper than spruce. And my rule of thumb, and this is a rule of thumb that goes back 29 years, is whenever you can buy 2x4 or 2x6 dry dug fir or dry white fir, inland white fir, below the cost of spruce, you just shut your eyes and buy as many as you can and don't worry about it, right? That's a marry. That's not a date.
Yeah.
The date one, I'm kind of on Gregg's side here, but it's more like just studs in general, 2x4 studs. So I like all 2x4 92 5/8 whitewood, whether it's eastern western spruce or whether it's hemlock or WW, whatever you want to call it. 2x4 92 5/8 stud or greater, all the way up to premium. I want to own those. I think they're just too cheap relative to time of year and future demand and the cost of 2x4 random. So if you look at all those things, I think 92s are undervalued right now. 104s are obviously undervalued. Gregg's advice is perfect. I can't say it any better. And then therefore, what you'll also see is 116s will start to scoot up too in concert with 104s. And if 116s stay down, they'll get bought up by people that might finger join them because finger joint studs are running 150 over solid studs. So
Oh, the finger
there's
joint numbers are crazy. Yeah.
they're
Good point,
700.
Matt.
700 versus 540. I mean, you tell me what anything could be finger jointed at 700, right? So
Do the math. Right.
anyhow, there's some things, and then as far as the gal that I don't like anymore, and I'm kicking her out of the harem, she's getting out at the next corner. That would be domestic 2x4 Doug fir. So while I really like the imported Doug fir because they want to dump it, at the same time, I want to sell the domestic Doug fir because if you look at the values on print, they're much higher. I'm a seller there and a buyer over here.
What's the difference in freight to most places between domestic and Canadian, Matt? Is it
I'd
pretty close?
say 20 to 40 at the most, but yeah, I'd say 20 as a rule of thumb.
Got it.
In favor of the Americans, shorter freight rates.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, mine's gonna be pretty easy because Gregg, I think should have let me go first because I had some of the same ones you had.
I did. No, I front ran you on that.
Yeah, that's okay. That's fair enough. So married to 2x4 104, own it, love it. It got down to a less volatile, but once it gets down to a zero on the crazy and hot chart, 2x4 104 and 5/8 are like really hot but not crazy. And anytime that they get down, now I'm talking Western, to a zero. So look, I like 2x4 104 and 5/8. And looking at the charts this week, anytime that they get down to almost zero basis to 2x4 Western, when I'm talking like Great Lakes and Boston, there's very few times that it ever gets down and trades below zero. And when it does, it generally snaps back pretty quickly. And so I like that. Date. I've tried dating the older and younger sisters of 2x4 16 euro before, the 12s and the 14s, but they just don't have the same volatility that I like in the 2x4 16s, right? Everybody calls me and tells me about where my 2x4 16s should be trading at. And when I start to hate them again, somebody comes in and pays my number again. So I really like them. And I'm going to continue to like them until I don't anymore. I'm going to break up with 2x4, even though I don't buy it anymore. A Western MSR. And I've got my eye on Great Lakes MSR if they ever want to go to a dance with me at like $50 to $80 below today's price. That's kind of what I'm looking at. A few things that I did want to, just two things I want to talk about, if we could, that in the What I Heard segment this week. So we talked a lot about Southern Yellow Pine and SPF, and that got a lot of people calling me, like on the phone, like immediately after the podcast was released. People that say that people do not switch Southern Yellow Pine for SPF. And then talked to a person yesterday. I said, yes, they had a big customer that actually did switch Southern pine to SPF. A lot of people in the Southeast and the Southwest don't prefer to do that, but it strictly was a pricing game for somebody, right? So I think some people, does this make sense? Some people do and some people don't. And I think
it's a Slim Jim item. You love it or you hate it.
That's exactly it. So that's one thing I wanted to talk about. And then if you guys had any feedback on that, and the other one was, person told me last year, for historically over time, they're about 80% car. I'm talking big buyers in the South and Southeast, 80% car, 20% truck. And some people were telling me last year, because the spreads of trucks kind of came in, they were 20% car, 80% truck. And I scratched my head and I'm like, could that be possible? And I guess did you see that in your business? Did you realize that? Why is that? I just thought that was a cool stat to talk about.
I think that has more to do with what we talked about for most of last year, which was the cost of money, the accountants in the back room telling people to keep their inventory low, and the ready availability of quick trucks from ports or people like me that have wood on the ground. And so they were willing to pay the extra money, or sometimes the money wasn't all that much extra, but they were willing to do that because they didn't want to carry the inventory. So they just wanted to do much more of this just-in-time fill-in type buying, as opposed to the 2 years previous where they just wanted to own it. Like I would have people call me up and say, I just need to get in your order file. Like, well, we're out 5 weeks. I don't care. Put me in there, Well, that's over. So, a return to reality, and then the reality that we're facing was 7% interest rates, 6% interest rates, 8% mortgage rates. People just had to pay more to store lumber. Why not transfer that cost over to Gregg or me or you or Blue Links or anybody else that distributes this stuff on a full-time basis? It just fit their business plans for last year. I think you'll see more of the same this year. Honestly, I don't think it's going to change all that much this year significantly. I don't know. I hate to say this, but I feel like this year is going to be fairly similar to last year overall. Now, I don't know, what the election is going to do, and I don't know what, more curtailment's going to do to the market, but I do feel like we're starting the year off at a fairly good equilibrium between supply and demand. And so I think we should all be sensitive to changes in supply and changes in demand.
I guess the only thing I challenge that from the standpoint of, I actually don't think this year is going to be as good as last year. And if you think about it, last year we had a $150 rally in January because we came into the year, nobody had any inventory, and people thought things were going to be terrible. Then then it sold off like $100 of it, and then we had a $100 rally in March. So we had so much more volatility than we've had so far this year. And I just don't think we're going to have that same volatility. I think it's much more of a slow, grinding stair step up. I think we will see higher prices, but I think they're going to be really hard fought. I mean, this is trench warfare market. You need to be down in there, with your bayonet ready to slit somebody's throat.
Right. I just think that if you're disciplined,
yeah.
I mean, are you with me, brother? Let's go.
I am. I'm ready to play. Let's dance.
Gregg had 2 cups of coffee today, Matt.
I did.
Yeah, he's
Ashley got me first thing this morning before my coffee. I told him, don't ever do that again. And then I said, about an hour before we came on, I go, I'm going to go get another cup of coffee so I'm ready to go.
And it did not disappoint.
I feel like
good stuff.
Go ahead, Matt. What were you saying?
No, I just was to finish Gregg's point. I think you're probably right in terms of the volatility aspect of it. but I just feel like it's going to be similar kind of market makeup. The big change between this year and last year is we don't have that massive pile of Euro stuff laying around the ports.
Right.
As of this time last year, we had a big pile of Euro laying around and
Oh.
more coming.
Yep.
That we don't have that this year, so
The
there's going to be
opposite.
room.
Yeah.
There's going to actually be some room for rallies, right? If there's more curtailments, we didn't even talk about this, but Dunkley laid off a shift. They knocked their production down 25%. There's other things going on out there that
Yeah, there's
will
quiet
affect
quitting.
production.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's quiet quitting going on out there, and there will be curtailments that we don't even hear about because people don't call random lengths or they don't send out an email. They don't contact Reuters. Anyhow, just stuff to pay attention to.
Well, great show today, guys. And everybody, thanks for listening to this week's January 24th, 2024 episode of The Lumber Word. Matt, Greg, and I will be back next week with our guest that is, like Greg said, is one of the top experts in not only European lumber, but Southeast Southern Yellow Pine production. So we'll look forward to that. We're building a big schedule for our guests, and we look forward to a big year for the podcast in 2024. So appreciate it, everybody. Greg and Matt, hope you have a great week.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of The Lumber Word. The Lumber Word podcast is dedicated to engaging conversations about the lumber industry, including trading ideas, market trends, and evaluations of overvalued and undervalued assets. We wish to emphasize that the discussions and opinions expressed in this podcast are purely for informational and entertainment purposes. They should not be considered as financial or investment advice. We encourage our listeners to make their own financial decisions, taking into account their unique circumstances and financial goals, and to seek professional financial advice if necessary.